Hi, so a couple of nice chats with people today at our annual Apple Day event, and talked to a few people who've got a bit of land, who've got the apple bug and who want to plant a small orchard for themselves. So good chats, find out what they wanted, point them hopefully in the right direction. And now is a really good time to get out to farmers markets, get out to autumn fairs, get out to your neighbours and your friends and people who've got some apples and pears and whatever else is good fruit where you live, so you can taste them, find out what you prefer. Hopefully a backyard orchard is going to be at least 3 trees, maybe as many as 10. Probably you don't want more than that unless you have plans for them, such as cider or sharing with neighbours. What a good idea. But you do want to think about the season of ripening. Now, I've said something about early apples. Now I just want to say a few more words about some apples that ripen in the mid-season, the main sort of mid-September to late October sort of season. Kidd's Orange Red is one of our biggest and most successful apples. This was raised in New Zealand about 80 years ago, and one of its parents is Cox's Orange Pippin. Since the Cox's Orange Pippin first became widely known, plant breeders have been breeding apples from it and trying to see if they can get an apple with the flavour of Cox, but without some of its growing difficulties, because Cox is a sickly apple. It does not grow well. Now, Kidd's Orange Red grows very well for us most years. It does need a whiff of fungicide because it has some tendency to scab, not as bad as its parent. It's a really good apple. It's got a very, very good flavour, very rich aromatic flavour, not unlike Cox's Orange Pippin. This is our #1 Cox substitute. We don't grow Cox. We've tried. It will not survive on our soil. This is Lord Lambourn. This is a very widely planted apple. It's a really reliable one, and it's a good choice for a backyard orchard. There's a saying about IBM computers. I don't know whether this is still true, or indeed it was ever true, but there's a saying that nobody ever got fired for buying IBM, which is to say, you know, it's a sort of industry standard type of thing. It might be a little bit expensive, it might not do absolutely everything everybody wants, but it's pretty good. Lord Lambourn is like that. It's nice, it's a well coloured apple, often gives a good size. It hardly ever needs to be thinned very much. It's got a strong tendency to crop just about right. It's a reliable heavy cropper. Flavour is sort of halfway between vinous and aromatic. When you're planning your backyard orchard, you want to think about what sort of flavours you enjoy, what sort of textures you enjoy. The vinous type of apple, a good example of that is Spartan, Jonathan, Wine Sap. The North American flavour tends to be more for a vinous apple. They're crisp, crunchy, appley flavour, but not very richly spicy. A typical example of an aromatic apple would be a Cox's Orange Pippin, or maybe an Ashmead's Kernel, or an Egremont Russet. It's got lots of spicy, complicated flavours to it, and it might not be quite as crunchy. So some people prefer a vinous apple, some people prefer an aromatic apple. Lord Lambourn is a very good compromise. It's got features of both. This is a variety called James Grieve. It was raised in Scotland originally, and it's said to do quite well in hard conditions. It's a dual purpose apple, that is to say you can eat it raw or cook with it. We tend to think it's probably more successful as a cooker. Cooks down to a froth. I think we tend to market this one as a cooker, don't we, Julia?
Yeah, it's not very good as an eating apple for us because our climate is normally too warm and dry, so it doesn't mature very well. So it's better to use it slightly underripe.
Yep,
where you get a wetter climate, it will develop nicely.
Yeah.
It makes a nice eater.
Yeah.
It did well the last 2 years when we had wet summers.
And it's said to do very well in Scotland in that respect. So James Grieve, if you can't make your mind up whether you want a cooking apple or an eating apple, this is an apple which is good to eat, and it's also very good to cook. When people ask us for a cooking apple in August, and they ask for Bramley, we'll say actually be much better off cooking James Grieve. Good apple. Here's another choice mid-season apple. This is Orleans Renette. This is possibly my very favourite apple. It's a dual-purpose apple. It's mainly an eating apple. However, the French cook with this. Got a short stalk, colours up beautifully. It's ripe October probably, really. It's not a very crisp and crunchy apple. If you really like a crisp and crunchy apple, then you don't want this apple, and you don't want egret russet either, really, because they tend to have more of a melting, almost chewy flavour, which I love. The texture, that is to say, the texture is great. You can keep it up until December, maybe, in a good year. I said a French cook with this apple. It's a very, very good apple. If you're a gourmet cook, if you like to use apples in your cookery, then the Orleans Renette is a very favoured sort of apple. The cropping is a little irregular. I mean, sometimes it just isn't. I mean, this is carrying quite a good crop, but even so, it's not as heavy as many varieties, and it's not an extremely regular crop. We do find some years it doesn't give a great crop. I think it's an extremely beautiful apple to look at. I love the flavour and I love to cook with it. It's the classic apple for the French tarte tatin, which is a sort of upside down apple and butter tart. A couple more apple varieties. This is one called Ellison's Orange, which is ripe sort of September, October really. It's not a first early apple, it might be called a second early or early mid-season apple. It's a Cox cross with a French apple called Calville Blanche. It can be quite attractive. We planted this having read about it. It sounded a very interesting apple. In fact, we find it's quite strongly biennial, big crop one year, no crop the next year. And once it's fully ripe, it's got quite a strong flavour of aniseed. In fact, if you taste a really ripe Cox's Orange Pippin, one of the flavour compounds in it is aniseed, but it's really nicely balanced. In this it's a little unbalanced, and truth to be told, we've reduced the number of this variety that we have, and I don't think I could recommend it unless you've tried and tasted it. If you've tasted Ellison's Orange and you like it, then by all means plant some. This variety is Sunset, highly recommended. It's a Cox cross. It was raised in Kent in 1918. It's a small apple. You have to thin it to get a good size. These are not quite ripe yet. Very tasty, very good flavoured apple. Julia likes them a lot in cooking. We've made some very nice pies with these, and Bramley. The Bramley froths up and these stay whole. We had a really good apple pie once, I remember. We made a lot of them actually for harvest supper. The Bramley frothed up, and we sliced these, and so we tried frothed Bramley and slices of this, which is a very nice apple. Really, it's not a bad apple. One of the many advantages of this is it crops regularly every single year, and it's a very good pollinator, and it has a very attractive blossom. Also, and this is an important consideration for a small garden, this does not get to be a very large tree. So Sunset is one to think about. It's a little bit prone to scab, so you may need to think about a bit of fungicide. If you insist on growing an apple in a large pot, a patio pot, which I cannot recommend, but it's a reasonable thing to attempt if you've got no other choices. Sunset would be a good recommend for that because it's very self-fertile. It's not a large tree. So those are just a few of the apples that we grow. I'm not trying to tell people which apples to grow. I'm just giving you a few examples and talking about some of the issues to consider. And now it's a good time. We've got October coming up. Wherever you are in the apple growing world, there's going to be people with exhibitions on. There's going to be neighbours, there's going to be friends. Hey, why not even organise a little event in your neighbourhood and get everybody who's got an apple tree to bring their trees along, bring some of their fruits along, and you can all have a sharing and taste and see what you like. Who knows what might grow out of something like that. You know, there's a lot about politics I discuss on the tube, but you know, conservatism and socialism, at least socialism of the cooperativist kind, hey, they can meet and kiss and make up and get on with people treating each other right. And yeah, harvest time is a good time to do that.